Call the meeting to order. Would you please stand and salute the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Welcome.
Can you just ask that Mark identify himself, that he's here?
Yes.
He's on electronic.
Mark?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
I haven't figured out the video portion yet, but my voice is here.
Yes, that's fine.
We recognize your voice. Hi, Mark.
Hello.
We want to see your face though.
I'm working on it.
Careful what's in the background.
Next thing on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. Which is
Yes,
Want my copy, Doug? Want mine?
I read through them,
They're okay.
so. I don't always, get all the misspelling that, like you did. Some of the English teacher stuff I might not have gotten, but I didn't find anything like that. I
Like
nothing.
Eric, commas and semicolons, things like this.
I know who he is, but I don't know. Well,
Who?
I don't know them.
Yeah, he lives
Well,
down by the
I mean, I
beach.
know who he is.
He owns that midnight swim.
Woody's. Yeah, but he owned Woody's rack down in Thompson, right?
He's a real estate agent too. He owns some buildings in Lewiston and he owns another house over in Manchester. He
Yeah.
rents.
I think it's property across from the
Yep, he wants to do something up there too. Yes.
development. Oh, this is so. Oh. You think they're okay?
I didn't find anything wrong, so.
Hey, there he is.
Look at,
Wow.
there's Mark, hi. Now he's muted though.
Mute yourself.
I'll get
There he is.
I'll get it figured out by the end of the meeting, I promise.
Yeah.
Why are you so red?
Son, we were on the boat today. It was horrible. It was like 83 and sunny all day.
Alright. He comes back?
You find the minutes.
So I make a motion, we accept the meetings, minutes from the meeting on February 22nd of 2023.
Second. So there's a motion by Chris, second by Joe to approve the minutes from February 22nd. All those in favor?
I vote in favor.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And next is department reports. Dan, did you want to?
Yeah, I apologize. I had 7 or 8 notes written out and I left that pad right on my desk. So I'll just try and wing it a little bit. Obviously it's been snowing. We've been busy. To say the least. Overall, we've done well. Keep the equipment going. We dodged a pretty good bullet the last Thursday mornings of that storm. Just to highlight, as we started up the loader, it blew a hydraulic hose in the garage for the lift bucket up front. It was a fairly easy repair for us to make. Delayed us about an hour getting out because we couldn't load sand into the trucks. As we got the loader fixed, we backed out of the garage and made the left turn towards the sand pile. And it then blew a main hydraulic line underside from directly off the hydraulic transmission assembly. That put us out of commission with the loader. We started to get the excavator out of the shed and to start loading sand with the excavator up from the sand pile. Made a few phone calls and Darren Frost from Blue Rock was willing to loan us his loader and drove it up to the building within about 15 minutes of the phone call. And that bailed us out tremendously in that storm. So a huge thank you to Darren Frost and Blue Rock Earthworks for their loaning of the loader. It wouldn't fit in the salt shed, so when salt was needed, I went up to my house and got my own tractor and brought it down, and we loaded salt with my tractor. Because we had to have it, get the roads to break up and keep things going. So just FYI, I did what I had to do. So chastise me if you want, but we had to continue. And then thankfully, the rest of that storm was pretty uneventful. The big storm over this past weekend, things went well overall. Did have a truck slide off on Lower Carver Road, and it slid off into the ditch enough that it required a heavy rescue wrecker company to come and lift the truck back up onto the road. We were unable to pull it up with our loader or any other equipment we had. So we were lucky to get out of that with no damage other than I haven't seen it yet. I'm assuming a very large tow bill to lift it up. So shifting gears, some of you may be aware that Maycumber Road, the culvert in the bog is clogged from beavers and muskrats. It started flooding a couple weeks ago when there was starting to melt. That culvert had not been on our radar because there'd been no activity there that we were aware of. For looking back in the notes on beavers, yes, we actually have notes kept on beavers since about 2017, but apparently they've moved back in. And they plugged it on us without us knowing. And today, two unsuccessful attempts previously to get the end of the culvert open, get it draining. Today, we were actually able to find the end of the culvert under 2-3 feet of ice and beaver house remnants. Due to the position of the culvert opening being so far off the road and down in the bog and underwater, we are not sure how we're going to unplug it at this point. So we may deal with some minor road flooding on Maycumber till the ice melts down and the water drops enough that we can get down in there by hand or get equipment closer to it. So stay tuned on that. I don't know if you, the transfer station, might have seen on the sign, Trudy Lee retired. Good luck to her in her retirement. Her last day work was this past Sunday, the 5th. Thanks, I apologize for not calling today. So we're working on hiring more people. I have a couple interviews tomorrow for some part-time help. I hope they work out. I'll let you know when I know more. Moment, that's all I can recall. I wanted to bring up.
Thank you. Chief. Good evening.
The packets I gave you, just highlighting what we talked about tonight. We provided coverage for the fishing derbies past 2 Saturdays, Jack's Draft Derby, and we had some parking issues, but nothing major. And then we had the Cobussy Fishing Derby Saturday. That went during the storm. I was surprised at the turnout, but it went well. No parking issues with that. That's pretty much off the road, where the one down in town is clogged up each road and Main Street. We kept that open fairly well. Month of February, you can see from the report, we handled 224 complaints, 4 arrests, 1 for OUI, 1 for domestic violence. The E911 PSAP issue, you guys should have a copy of the Dustin will provide you with a copy of the contract here later in the meeting, but I recommend approving the contract if we have no other choice at this point. It is a 6-month contract. The price is based on 6 months because of their budget cycle is different from ours, so that's why it's just a 6-month contract. I'm assuming that once we get beyond that 6-month period, we'll get a new contract for more than likely a 3-year contract. just to give you a heads up. My 2013 Ford Taurus that has 142,000, I was hoping to make last another 18 months is becoming problematic and costing us money, so I just want to throw that out to you. I wasn't planning on replacing that till the 24-25 budget cycle, but I'm not sure it's gonna last that long. I just want to give you a heads up there. Also want to bring to your attention, last night, Officer Moore and Sergeant Westling responded to a situation to back DHHS up on a situation where they were gonna put a safety plan in place and remove a subject from the household, get him away from the wife and kids, and when the officers got there to help him, he was in his bedroom locked in his bedroom along with several firearms, and they were able to defuse it and ended up making an arrest. But I just wanted to publicly say that they did a really good job, and I'm really proud of the both of them for handling the way they did. All that being said, that's pretty much my report tonight. That's what I have. Unless you have any questions.
I just have a question on the PSAP. The ongoing articles in the paper, it sounded like Waterville, who has their own service and used
They have
to
their own
handle.
dispatch center.
Yeah, and so they're kind of throwing out there. So by the time our 6 months is up, who knows, there might be options or not.
There might be, yes. I wouldn't think that it would happen that quick. It has to go through PUC approval and then the ECBS approval, so we'll wait and see how quick that goes through, but in the north, they're in a different situation than we're in down here because the other PSAPs that can handle that, so we'll wait and see what develops on that front. I think the main goal would be to keep all this southern Maine, southern Kennebec County communities that are dispatched out of Winthrop, dispatched out of the same PSAP because we share resources.
Yeah,
And it wouldn't make sense for ours to go to Waterville and everybody else's to go to
exactly.
Scoggins.
Yeah.
It's all something that we have to look at and consider in the future.
Winthrop used to be a PSAP.
Winthrop did not, just a dispatch center. They haven't handled any incoming 911 calls, direct calls,
Not even back in the day.
not that I'm aware of.
Sheriff's office did it, right? Kennebec County.
Yep.
Used to have their own.
KSO did.
And I'm not so sure that the county's drive to reestablish a dispatch center is going to happen. I would doubt that it would happen. That's what we're at with the PSAP issue now.
Thank you.
Maybe we can do a 2-for-1 here. We can have Dave do his
Yes.
report and then we can introduce Andrew McMullen here. He's our newly appointed code enforcement officer. He's been working with Dave this, 2 weeks now?
Yeah.
Few weeks. So, yeah, if you want to.
I gave you a report, for January and March, it's in the office. In your slot in the office, when you get back. I started in January. And, brought it up to today or yesterday, just to give you an idea. For those who remember, that's what it used to be. I used the same format. Gives you some quick shot at what's been happening in the office. And the front page, the cover page just gives you an update if there's anything going on with planning board or board of appeals. Andy will probably continue it. He's got all of my history going all the way back, because we found walls that I've never given. Where it has some history to go back and look at. We've got the computer down great already, so I'm very very pleased the last 2 weeks. I think we were a good fit for the community. And if you have any questions on that, I'll be glad to answer. If not, that's all I have.
Where are you from?
I live in Sydney. Yep, it's not super far away, but
There's a select board member like you.
yeah, I'm currently on the select, was the end of my 50 year, I will not be running. Stepped up to help and, my time's. I have a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old student, so I got other things to do, whichever sport thing. Now, code enforcement.
What brought you to wanting to do this?
Well, that's a good question. I'm 12 years prior law enforcement. I own my own real estate company now. I've been doing real estate for about 10 years. I mean, I have quite a diverse background. Before law enforcement, I worked in the mental health field. I mean, I've done a lot of different things. But code enforcement's just been something that was kind of an interest to me. I started doing some research on it, realized there was a lot of need for it. And something I thought I'd be able to do. So I kind of started looking, and I actually reached out to Justin to ask him some questions, and he said, send me a resume, please, basically. But you know, I think it'll be a good fit. I, you know, am kind of old school, new school, so I think I'll do some stuff different than Dave does, but I like a lot of the stuff he does. Been in a month with him, which he's here till the end of the month, my understanding. So I think it'll be good to get that, and I have no problem giving you guys obviously what he's giving you tonight. Seems pretty easy to do that. And I talked to Justin, for the most part. I'll be obviously talking with him. So if you guys need anything from me specifically, obviously reach out, but otherwise Justin will probably be able to fill you in because I'll fill him in.
So you didn't know each other before? No.
No, I just found out today you lived in Sydney.
I just told him today.
Oh, I can see some timeshare.
Ride sharing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Great.
the report I had from Ernie was that having experience in real estate, you'll at least know what a buildable lot is.
Yeah. I know how to research deeds and do those stuff. So I have kind of a broad brush of that, which is good.
Yeah,
Some of the, you know, intricate stuff will be a learning curve, but I think I'll be fine with that. I'll learn pretty well. Yep. And I can still call Dave up and say, hey, you know, stop. So confused.
yeah.
I think he gets pretty good fee for the other part. But yeah, so if anybody doesn't have any questions, I'm probably gonna take off, I guess.
What are your hours gonna be?
Good question.
So Mondays, I will be in the office every Monday because Ernie's there anyways.
Mhm.
And I know that was needed, so I'm thinking, and we just talked about that 10 to 1, which is, you were doing 9 to noon, I'm probably 10 to 1, just so I don't, you know, I don't like being late, so if I do 10, I have plenty of time to get down here. We have a farm, so I think we started talking about that, so I have to milk goats and stuff. Yeah, but my wife's actually an attorney for the Maine Association of Realtors, so she has other obligations, so I do that stuff. So yeah, so 10 to 1 is my thought on Monday, and then we had talked about doing Wednesdays is the other good day for me anyways. I think you were doing Wednesdays anyway, so the days will be the same, probably by appointment only, so I'll plan to be in. But my thought was if I don't have appointments, I may go out and do other stuff in town or whatever during that time. So that's kind of my plan at this point, so.
And your information's all up on the website so that people can
Just if it's
email
separate.
you and
So if it's not, it will be.
all that fun stuff, get a hold of you.
Yeah, so to get it changed over too, which would be nice when the phone system's fixed. I'll be able to actually get stuff from home.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
I gather there might have been some issues in the past that, you know, people weren't getting back to quick enough or something. And if I have that, I mean, I should be able to get back to it very quick. Because like I said,
Yeah.
I work for myself now, so. I mean, other than showing a house here and there and stuff, I mean, I'm pretty flexible, so I think it'll be good.
You'll have to deal with our assessing agent, Donna. And
Yes,
Yeah.
we're trying to work that out right now.
she's here on Tuesdays.
She's here on Tuesdays, but she
It's
is,
coming in Monday, they
she's
said.
hoping to plan to change to a Monday
Oh, okay.
on her on her third
day.
day of the month. She has to do 3, she's here the first and third Tuesday, so there's still one other day that she comes in. And she's been flip-flopping back and forth. If she can switch her other town to where she can come in on Monday, then they'll overlap.
So I'll meet her anyways and obviously touch base with her because I know, again, hearing from things that have happened in the past, and I don't think will be a problem, working with her and makes sense to have good relationships with all these people because they're gonna help me as much as I'm gonna help them. So I think that'll be fine.
Yeah. Your wife is an attorney?
Yes,
Who is she?
Hannah McMullen.
And where does Hannah work?
She's the corporate counsel for the Association of Realtors now.
Ah,
Yeah, she did private practice before.
I was an attorney too, so I think he's trying to see if there's a connection.
Somebody else, she friend that's already trying to poach her back to the private sector. She goes, I don't want to.
Well, welcome aboard. We're
Yeah.
happy to have you.
Yeah, and feel free to skip up when you.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you, Mark, and I say, I met you two, but I say I don't know if I officially met you, but nice to meet you. All right, guys, have a good night.
Thank
Good night.
you.
Thanks. Thank you. Dan's, great Dan's. Yes. I can read it. Yeah. This is from Dan Roy, Fire Chief. The department continues to be busy with call outs. In fact, we are only 2 calls away from this time last year, which was a record year for us. The most notable call was the structure fire on Back Street. It's unfortunate the dwelling was a total loss, but thankfully no one was home at the time. The dwelling was under renovation, so most contents were not inside. The cause of fire is undetermined. It appears fire had been burning for a while prior to the fire's discovery. The trip to attend the International Firefighter Cancer Symposium in Miami, Florida went well. A few of us plan on sharing information learned with the rest of the firefighters at the upcoming training session in April. PFAS was a popular topic that was discussed because it is being found in turnout gear, fire stations, apparatus, groundwater, etc. Past weekend, several firefighters attended the Northeastern Fire Summit that was put on by the New England Fools in Wells, Maine. This was another great training opportunity, which consisted of leadership and tactical topics that will be shared with the rest of our membership. On March 26th, the Firemen's Auxiliary and the fire department will be hosting a community dinner at the Packard Center. That's from me. That's for me, just so I've informed you all, but we were successful in getting a DEP stream crossing grant. So we got $150,000 from DEP to help with the Beaver Brook Bridge. So that's good news. The audit, I'm still waiting. He did email me last week and said that he's working on it now on the weekends because he's busy doing other towns now during the week. And the new phone system is scheduled to be installed next Wednesday and Thursday of next week. Which, as Andy mentioned, it'll be nice for us because the voicemails will be converted to email. So those that have access to their emails at home will get their voicemails on their desk. So for someone like Andy, who's not here all the time, he will be able to at his leisure kind of check on the voicemails that are in the phone, even when he's not here. So he'll be able to get back to people. I did tell him there isn't an expectation for him to answer those all the time because we're only really paying him for those 2 days. But I said, but you can deal with that as you see fit. But there's certainly people still have to be aware that he has working hours and non-working hours for us. So I think that's all I have for now.
is there anything else the new phone system offers?
It is going to be more of a town-wide system. So instead of kind of, there are instances now where you have to hang up and tell people to call other people. Now it's going to be a cohesive voice over IP system. So we'll be able to get rid of a certain amount of our landlines. There should be some cost savings associated with it. It's also part of our new IT vendor. So we now have one person to call for all of our technology needs, whether it be your computer or your phones. It'll all be the same company that we'll be dealing with. So it's all new devices for each individual desk too. That's part of the deal too.
So Justin, this is Kent here. Hey,
Oh, okay.
hey, finally got logged in. Does that mean you won't have to hang, when you say you don't have to hang up, does that mean that you'll be able to do a transfer from one phone to another without dropping the call?
Yes, that's correct. So from, PD to public work, whatever you can dream up, you'll be able to do it as long as they're part of our conversion.
Sure. Okay. That makes sense. And before we get too far away from it, that's great news. We got the $150,000 subsidy from DEP on that culvert crossing. What is the balance that the town will be responsible for in that project?
I think it's the total project, I think is 320,000, I believe. Like take the 150 out of that. I'll add these up real quick. I think it's on here, but I think that's what it adds up to.
So
That's with
roughly
the-
170.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fine. It
What's
was
that,
10
Chris?
to be easy math.
It cuts
Well,
off. It is
yeah.
10, but but I know it is 10. Yeah. Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
So my only questions are, has anybody else come in with the back taxes? How's that?
We've had a couple more, one in, North Main Street. He's been in twice now and he says he's gonna go get the money. We're waiting and I'm still, so no one else has actually paid, but everybody except the property on Ridge Road has either promised to pay or has paid.
Yeah.
Ridge Road property, I haven't heard anything.
And how about the Wilson Pond Road property?
He's come in, but he hasn't paid.
Okay, so we did find someone who is associated with that property who has a legitimate claim to it?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I was thinking of the Cotler Lane on Annabessa. No, Wilson Pond, there is nobody coming forward on that. I don't expect there to be.
Okay. And do we have a sense of when we're going to get the next batch?
I have 3 on my desk for your next meeting as of today.
Awesome. And
We'll see how many more I can get.
Okay, are they as large as the ones that we started with? In
No.
terms of,
One of them, for example, one of them is a very, if you're driving across on Wilson Stream, if you're driving across the 1-lane bridge there's a landlocked small piece on the left. It's almost like a peninsula into the stream. There's no way to get to it. No one's paid taxes on it. I'm suspecting because it's kind of useless. So I don't know whether the original owner wants it or not, but it's like, there's a piece like that. There's another one that's a mobile home, but they own the land under it, so we can move forward with that. 3 or 4 others that I've set aside are mobile homes on lease lots. You can't do anything with those.
right. Right. So the ones we're not going to do anything with, how do we wipe the slate clean and just say, okay, never mind?
Well, some of them you may or may not want to. The mobile homes, you don't want to do that because in theory, they should, if they ever move, they're supposed to come in and get a permit from us to move it.
Okay, so we would have
And
some
that's your
leverage.
opportunity. Yeah, I mean, if it doesn't disappear in the middle of the night, right, which some of these do, but if they do it properly, to get a permit, they have to pay the back taxes. So we'll just let the liens keep piling up on them. And you may get the money someday. Some of them, when we get through the process, if you just don't, some of them that we're not dealing with are, one is like in bankruptcy, so we can't do anything. Others, we just don't have the backup material for the back years, so we'll leave those liens on there. And then when we file the new batch of lien, or even the ones when Linda were here, those were all done kind of timely too. So those will eventually catch up, and then we will have the proper documentation to act on them, and then we can get the back taxes too. So some of it's just a waiting game until we have enough stuff filed properly and accounted for that we can do something with it.
Okay. Oh, I have a special request for the town manager.
Okay.
It's a detailed process request. When you post the link for these meetings online,
Yes.
I think Joe had the same problem I had this evening, where the link is not a clickable link unless you have a PDF document. Did you have the same thing, Mark? Yeah, we were all scrambling to try and get into the meeting because.
Oh, on the Word document?
Yeah, if you could post a Word document or just the link itself in a place where it can be highlighted and then copied and pasted. Because
On the-
Calendar, isn't it?
On the calendar link, the packet is a PDF, but the agenda is a Word document. So
Yeah.
you can get, if you click on just the agenda itself on the calendar, it is a Word document. It has the Zoom information at the bottom.
That's where I got it. I went to the end of the document and then just took a picture of the thing and went to the Zoom site and was able to get on.
Yeah,
But I had to look for a while to find it.
oh man,
sure.
and I was scrambling and I had to email this person so they could bring it up on their computer that had the right software. Anyway, it would, if there's a way, when you post that on the website, on the calendar, maybe it's on the calendar event, just to make it clickable, because if someone doesn't have a,
If you go to the Word document, Kent, on the calendar, if you click under your meeting on the calendar here, the town calendar,
yeah,
there's the agenda is a Word document, so you can
Yeah.
get to it there. If you go into the packet, then
I
it's
understand.
scanned.
I understand what you're saying. I
Okay,
get it. What I'm saying is, on more than one occasion, and with colleagues on the board, we've had folks get tripped up by that and have to scramble. And if there's just an easier way so that folks don't need to know to go into the Word document to do that. Or maybe we only post the Word document. I don't know. That would be an option. Like, give them one way to go, and then it's clickable, and they can get in without a whole lot of confusion.
Mine
That-
must
Or
be
add a
special
note on there.
because even when I was in the hospital with a brain aneurysm, I was able to click on the link. So I must be special.
If you put a note in the calendar saying where to look, that might help.
Yeah,
okay.
well,
look and
that
see
might
if
be
there's-
true, and you know, yeah.
I'll look into it. I'll see what I can do.
I mean, I've lost count of the number of complaints I've gotten from people who have had difficulty getting to the meeting online and then just give up. So we need to change the way we're doing it so that those people can participate. That's all. That's my point.
Next thing is select board reports. Are there any? Select board? No. Thank you. Next, public comment.
Oh, actually, Doug, I've got a couple of select board reports to mention before we move on to public comment.
Okay.
I had a chance to talk about with our Senator Hickman, about a bill that he introduced on behalf of the town of Monmouth regarding the best practices for the use of propane cannons as a bird deterrent. And he was unable to motivate. If you recall, the neighbors on Norris Hill asked if we could just get the Department of Agriculture to define what it is to be a best practice, what is okay and what is not okay when you use these propane cannons during the latter part of the season to keep the birds away. And the department was unresponsive when Senator Hickman asked them to do it on their own. So what he did was he put in a bill that requires them to do it. And I forwarded that bill to Pat, who lives up there on Norris Hill, who's been sort of the leading advocate up there to try and work with Cooper Orchards to get things to be reasonable. And so Pat and Senator Hickman and I are working together to sort of come up with a game plan. At some point, I imagine there's going to be a hearing on this, and it would behoove us to pass the word. I'm sure Pat will help to the residents of Norris Hill and anyone else who's been impacted in the past season, so we don't have to go through another summer of drama. So there's that. Also, I asked Representative Tavis Hassenfeld to put in a bill about local recycling, about allowing municipalities to be immune from liability if they have a local recycling program. It's got reasonable safety measures and they're following those safety measures, then it would be, according to this bill, this idea, then it would be, they would not be held liable if someone ever got hurt, which is sort of the thing that our insurance company wants to hear before they would allow us to allow the people who are interested in reusing lumber or reusing parts from the metal bin or anything that they're currently prohibited from doing because our insurance company has told us they're concerned about the liability and they prohibited us from doing that. So there's a bill that's inching its way forward in the legislature on that topic as well.
Okay. Anything else? No. You're good with us so far? You're okay?
So far, so good.
Okay, so then on to public comment. Any public comment? Okay, on to a request from the Monmouth Water Association to allocate funds to assist with grant writing for the North Monmouth Public Water Project.
The absence of our president, who's under the weather, I'm going to do my best to share with you. There's an urgency in us getting applications submitted, get funding. And there's plenty of money in the federal government, apparently, congressionally directed spending earmarks, they have grants. There's no limit on funding amount. However, the urgency is that the deadline is 5 p.m. Friday, March 17th. What we're asking is that you help us by funding this. Same company that did the technical study, Du Bois and King, is capable of helping reach the details. Bear with me. They would meet with the funding agencies on our behalf, gather the relevant funding information, coordinate the grant application process, and assist with writing the grant applications. They feel, as far as I'm being reimbursed for this service, they feel an hourly approach will allow for us to determine the extent of the assistance required by Monmouth Water Association. They're suggesting that we recommend a budget of $8,500.
We had money left from
Yes.
doing the surveys to begin with,
Correct.
correct? So,
We've to date have paid D&K $19,400. And the Winthrop Utilities District, $3,797.
My experience, that's not a lot of money to ask to
No,
have a company help
exactly.
you with that,
especially
with the return that you probably get,
Yeah.
because they know what they're doing.
exactly.
So the $8,500 has been allocated already?
What the board did was they authorized, I think, up to $100,000 to be spent out of the ARPA funds for the study, which then only came in to be, what was the total that, do you remember? Was it like?
19.9.
Yeah, and it ended up being a lot less than we expected, so
Yeah.
there's still money
Right.
sitting there that's that you can use for
Yeah.
whatever you want at this point.
I make a motion, we approve the request of the Monmouth Water Association to allocate funds to assist with grant writing for the North Monmouth Water Project.
Second. So there's a motion by Chris, second by Joe to approve the request of the Monmouth Water Association to allocate funds to assist with grant writing.
Doug,
North
could I make
Monmouth.
a clarification?
Sure.
Because I think this is an awesome idea. I think this is a great idea, but I think we need to amend the motion to include something that includes like a contract extension for the engineering firm so that we don't have to necessarily go through an RFP process. Does that make sense, Justin?
It's under the 10,000, so it's actually, it's under the amount that I can authorize to spend without bringing that contract to you, and I don't have to do an RFP if it's a service related item. So we should be all set, but that's a good point.
So we don't need to amend anything.
We don't need to amend anything. I stand corrected.
So it then. Chris made a motion, Joe seconded it, and we're going to, all those in favor of allocating funds, for that purpose.
I vote in favor.
I'm in favor.
Okay.
I just have a question. How many people came to that meeting on that Thursday night? I think it was supposed to be snowy. Did you have some
The
decent
room was
turnout?
Pretty full. I don't know the
Yeah.
exact
Yeah.
number, but we did have a good turnout.
And people were open and anxious.
And
Yeah.
somewhere, you know, typical
Yeah,
pros, cons from-
yeah,
There's a lot of misinformation out too.
Yeah.
I heard one man say that it's gonna cost $5,000 to hook up to your house. And I'm like, well, gosh, geez, how'd you figure that out? Because we don't even know what it's gonna
Yeah.
cost, based on the funding,
yeah, exactly.
just the rumor mill.
Well, and the point that I had discussions, I talked with, Richard Robertson one day, and what happens if Tex Tech is no longer and they're giving people water? And all of a sudden Tex Tech doesn't exist anymore. Well, who's gonna give you water? So there has to be a plan B, Yeah, yeah.
I zoomed in and it was a good meeting. Kent did a good job.
Yeah.
Thank you, Doug. I think it's important for us to acknowledge that Tex Tech is doing what it can and is doing the right thing, given a bad situation. They have clearly spent 6 figures on making sure that the immediate situation of providing clean, safe drinking water to people in the North Monmouth Village has been addressed. That it's not a long-term situation. It's not a long-term solution. It's just it's a Band-Aid. But I think they sent a representative to that meeting. They seem super constructive. And for as much as this is the ending of what I hope is a bad chapter in North Monmouth, I think Tex Tech has really done a nice job of stepping forward and trying to do the right thing.
The people from Tex Tech were very informative. 2 guys that were there, we Justin is, and anyway. Okay, we're all set.
Yeah.
Next is to consider the PSAP service contract from Androscoggin County Sheriff's Office.
I don't have any questions on it.
No, I have, no, okay. We need a motion and
I make a motion, we agree to the PSAP service contract with the Androscoggin County Sheriff's Office.
there's a motion by Chris, second by Joe to find the PSAP service contract with Androscoggin County Sheriff's Office. All those in favor?
I vote yes.
This is Mark. I vote yes.
Thank you. Next is to consider the responses to the solar energy project request for proposal.
I can start off
This one response.
Yeah.
Yes.
I can start off the conversation with an overview of the booklet you have in front of you that has been provided by a company that's actually bid twice now in Monmouth on various solar projects that we've asked about. They, in their proposal, put together two versions of their of a solar array. One is very large and probably more than what we need. The other is much smaller and almost exactly what we need, and perhaps a little too small if we have other entities interested in partnering, and if that's possible with them to partner with the town. I know at our last conversation, Justin, you were going to check into whether or not the sewer district would be able to partner with the town. They have about a $20,000 a year electricity budget or so. Were you able to figure anything out there?
Yes, so the lenders don't care. It's going to be the town's full faith and credit. So anything you add on to it for them will be on the town's, it'll be against the town, not against them. So they don't care either way. So it'll essentially be a private, it'll be a contractual agreement between us and the water district or the sewer district or whoever that would want to add on to it.
Sure. I did talk to the water district a little bit about that possibility. Right now, their electric bill is like $1,800. So it didn't seem like that was worth, going through the construction of a contract and, jumping through all the hoops, because the increases on their electricity bill are fairly nominal when you look at the whole budget. On the other hand, the sewer district, I don't know, did Paul Roop ever bring in copies of their electric bill, Justin?
No,
All right, well, we'll see how enthusiastic they are about pursuing this. If they're not enthusiastic, then we can set that possibility aside. But if they do get enthusiastic, and it sounded to me like partnering with a Monmouth nonprofit that serves by and large the same group of people that we serve, only for sewer disposal, kind of makes sense. And the other advantage for the town would be that we would likely be able to go back to the vendor that's made this proposal and talk about a per kilowatt reduction in price if the scale increases by a $20,000 electric bill. When you look at their two proposals, what might jump out at you is that their cost to construct the smaller proposal is about $3 a watt. And their quoted cost to construct the much larger version, which we probably don't want to do, but it just gives you an example of where they might be willing to go with pricing, is about 60% of that per watt. So the larger you get, the better a deal you get. And it certainly would be in the town's interest if we could push the price down a little bit and lock in our electric costs for the next 25 years. And so that's really, what we're looking at in terms of this proposal. Justin, did you have a chance to find out where the market is in terms of interest rate if we were to borrow the $600,000 that I think it might have been $590,000 that was part of this proposal? What's the current interest rate for that?
so if we went through the bond bank, we're looking somewhere in the upper 4s to 5% range
Okay,
at this point. And it's climbing every day.
of course. So I did, a basic model, financial model based on a 6% interest rate that essentially got the project to be a wash when it comes to cash flow. And that was a standalone project just for the town of Monmouth, not including anything that we might do with the sewer district. So to hear that the interest rate is somewhat lower than what the basic assumption was when we were doing the back of the envelope, financial model for this, is encouraging, because it means that the prospect of doing this project would not only lock in Monmouth for any electricity increases for the next 25 years, would make us immune from that. But it would also mean that we are paying principal and interest payments to the bank that are somewhat less than what we would currently be paying to CMP once the on switch is pressed for this system. It's also interesting to note that this proposal includes a maintenance plan. That's part of the model, part of the assumptions. That it includes, and it would with, with any process. It includes a warranty. If memory serves, it's 20-year warranty on those panels. I'm not quite sure. I think maybe with a half a percent degradation assumption built in. So the town is protected from, surprise reliability if the panels don't perform. It seems to me like this particular proposal is a no-brainer. It does involve borrowing some money, quite a lot of it. But again, when we do that and we get a subsidy from the federal government, not unlike the subsidy that we're getting for the culvert in North Monmouth, that turns the return on investment to this to be cash flow positive for about 10 years and then completely paid off at about year 10, and means that the net benefit for the town will equate to $40,000 a year in today's dollars from year 10 to year 20. Doesn't get much better than that. Doesn't actually require us to outlay any cash. It does require us to borrow some money and then apply for a refund for a good portion of it. And the principal and interest payments would be somewhat less, slightly less, I would characterize it, as our current electric bill to CMP. I think this is a proposal that is far enough along that it deserves to be heard by the voters. And so I would make a motion that we ask the town manager to draft an article for the June warrant that would be included in the June warrant that would describe the project, describe the financial ramifications of the project for taxpayers. And I would suggest that we let the voters decide whether this is something they want to do.
So before we have a second, I have some questions. If we could.
I have a couple
So,
also.
what's that?
I have a couple also.
Okay, so disposal, decommissioning. How does that get handled?
It's all in the,
Is-
it's in there.
And so it's $3,500 a year maintenance yearly, so that's maintenance schedule. I didn't see in here where they tell you how much it costs and who's gonna decommission it and who's gonna pay to decommission it.
Doug,
So-
maybe you could refer Kristen to the page on decommissioning?
Well, I don't have my book. All I have is a couple of pages.
So while I look for that, the next thing is have we even?
And Chris, do you want to do this one at a time, or do you want to just tell me all you're thinking and then I'll respond?
Well, we'll find that page, and look at that. So the other thing, we've got Dan here. We haven't even, the one thing that I've said through all of this is, has anybody even talked to Dan to find out if we can have space, if there's space available, especially if we're thinking we need to redo demo and enlarge the demo capacity? Because obviously the big one takes up the whole entire transfer station. That's not going to happen. The second one is taking up Burley Shed, the dirty wood pile, and trucks to get down there to haul out. To haul the tractor trailer load out. So, it can't be where they put it in the plan. Obviously, that's just a guess of where they put it, but it can't be where they put it because Aaron wouldn't be able to pull his trucks around there. So,
I haven't seen the drawings, the sketches.
yeah,
Based on that placement, I have to just like, you absolutely can't do that.
yeah, exactly. It has to go up towards the road more and where the lawn is on the other side of the dirty wood pile. It can't encroach on tractor trailer trucks being able to turn and get backed in there. And where the metal bin is.
And not to throw a wrench in this, but Dan and I did have a conversation earlier this week about, we have some, it's kind of a sidetrack, but I want you to have the full picture. We have some serious expensive equipment at the transfer station
Yes.
that is going to need to be replaced. And when it's mostly the compacting trailers, and it is kind of a bigger question here is, do we just, do what we've been doing and replace those, or do we, or do we take kind of a step back with our transfer station operations and look at, should we be doing all the things that we're doing anymore? Is there a bit more cost effective way
Exactly.
to get rid of our stuff? If we want to keep it all, should the whole place be laid out differently? There's a lot of sort of questions there because these trailers are how much, Dan, you told me? To replace one of these things, and we need a couple, right?
The last one in 20,000. I can assume that with the market.
200.
And 135 minimum per trailer.
We need two at least in the semi-short term.
In the semi-short term, we do need two.
So we had kind of talked, it was gonna be one of the things I was gonna kind of mention in budget. I'm not gonna get sidetracked off of this, but it was gonna be, should we be looking at, potentially getting a consultant to look at our operations and see if we should still be doing the same thing that we're doing. But
Yeah.
so I just wanted you to know that we really don't know how that should be laid out up there. That's all I'm
Exactly.
trying to say.
Exactly.
Yeah. Is that a fair assessment?
That's fair.
Yeah.
fair.
And, the timetable of installation. If we started now or on the 3rd of March, which is already passed, is up and running July 15th of 2024. But obviously that's not going to happen because it's going to get pushed out if it goes to the voters and all of that. And then if everything's available and not on back order, which they say, the lead times are out there on some of these things. So what happens if this doesn't get installed until and up and running until 2025, mid-January? Let's just say mid-January, early February. And there's a change in the administration. And the Inflation Reduction Act goes away, or it's repealed or unfunded if there's a change in the administration. So that money we were counting on getting back from the federal government, we don't get. So that's 150,000, I think, or what was the number that it would have been that we would have gotten back in federal funds?
So let me make sure, so far I've heard that you're concerned about the $3,500 maintenance plan.
That's not the problem. I don't have a problem with the maintenance plan. What I want to know is who's responsible for paying to decommission the panels?
Okay, so you're also concerned about the decommissioning process.
Yeah,
So far, I've also heard you say that you're concerned about the placement. And I've also heard you say you're concerned about the timetable. Are there any other concerns on your list?
ground contamination, that's part of the watershed right there. That brook is part of Cobussy watershed. I think there's been a lot of information out there about people's concerns on ground contamination, so those are my four things on my list.
Actually,
And then the other thing is you had asked me to find out information about the academy project, and I have that from the mechanical engineer.
sure.
The first phase with HVAC and plumbing load, it'll only be 5 kilowatts. Phase 2, once the heat pumps are installed and running, it will assume an additional electrical load of 21 kilowatts and then lights and power at 2 watts per square foot. So that's what I have from the mechanical engineer on the project.
That's super.
Right.
I think, thank you for that. If you could ask them how many kilowatt hours that equates to on an annual basis, then that would be the number that would help us understand the scale that we would be trying to replace in terms of the electrical load.
Well, I guess we'll just multiply that by 12. Once I find out the
Well,
square
you said-
footing of the building.
Well, you said 5 kilowatts. Is that,
5, 21, and then 2 watts per square foot
okay, but we
for
need,
lighting.
we need the electrical engineer to do kilowatt hours. So that's what you've given me. Kilowatts is like, doesn't tell me how, it tells me the capacity, but it doesn't tell me how much we're going to use them over the course of a year. So that's the difference between a kilowatt and a kilowatt hour. And when we equate electric bills, we talk about kilowatt hours. That's how much electricity did you use for how many hours? So we kind of, we need somebody to estimate, like, okay, if the initial system is 5 kilowatts and it's holding the building at 60 degrees for 365 days a year, when it's super hot and when it's super cold, maybe it's 68 degrees. I don't, you can build your assumption in, then we're going to need to know how many hours that 5 kilowatt system runs, so that then we can estimate, like, okay, how many kilowatt hours of electricity are we going to use? And then we can say, okay, the current kilowatt hour rate for CMP is X number of cents, 20 cents-ish, 22, I don't know, depends on the type of meter we've got. But that's the kind of, that's
We have a
step
meeting
closer.
on Monday. So we have a meeting on Monday, and I will
Super.
try to, I don't always have the electrical engineer or the mechanical engineer there, but I will ask this question on Monday
Sure,
and see if we can have somebody that does complex math problems
well,
figure that out.
I don't know that it has to be a super complicated simulation. We just need to understand that, and some of it's going to depend on how much insulation you got in the building. So there are a bunch of moving parts, but if they could give us at least a stab in the dark of, like, how much, how we're trying to
Get it.
approximate.
Yep. I will ask them.
Yeah.
So
All right,
those
so
are mine. So Mark, what are your concerns?
My concerns were the layout currently at the transfer station. I know we had some discussion about the wood going into the demo container at some point, but we are not there yet. So obviously we still utilize all that ground space for the dirty wood pile, and also the metal container, and quite an area around the metal container that we currently use, and we have not come up with another plan for what's going to happen with that. That was my main concern.
okay, so Dan is here. Is he aware of any need for the dirty wood pile to go away?
board put it into the demo container. That was the biggest concern. The way we dispose of it now, quite a savings compared to the demo container cost. However, it can go in there. You just have to budget for it.
Right, so
Does that answer
under
your
our
question?
current, so what I'm hearing Dan say is that under our current economic assumptions, it's less costly for the taxpayers of Monmouth to take the dirty wood pile, chew it up into bits, and send it away to, to be used for some industrial purpose rather than to throw it in the demo pile and cart it away in a bin. Is that my assumption? I mean, under today's pricing of how to dispose of that stuff, is that a true statement?
Yes, the way we are doing business right now is our most cost-effective
Okay.
solution at the
So
moment.
hypothetically, if somehow the market were to change and we needed to put it into a container, would that not free up space at the transfer station? I mean, the demo pile would then go, the dirty wood pile would then go away, and that whole area down there that is currently under the dirty wood pile would not have a current use at that point. Is that my understanding? Is that a true statement?
You can phrase it that way,
Okay.
but I you can use that space for other transfer station uses. One concern that's coming up that I'll be dealing with partially this year is the top of the capped landfill.
Yeah.
We need to get off of it, which means we need to move the compost pile and move the clean brush pile from where they are. We need to get off that capped section of the landfill and not be racing over it and plowing it and being on top of it. So that's an issue that's on the back burner, but we're getting to a point it's gonna have to become a front burner issue. I don't have a yard calculation yet, but I'm gonna have to bring in a tremendous amount of fill from our pit this year. I'm gonna have to screen it out, get it to the correct size, and as you know, the rough idea, I'm gonna have to put basically 6 inches of material on the entire upper section of that dirt lot right now to get us up off the cap and get some cushion in there. Ideally, that would mean potentially moving the compost pile and the clean wood pile off that section of the landfill to avoid issues that can come up and potential unhappiness from the DEP.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just, you know, yep.
So I appreciate your deferring to DEP, and we're going to talk about DEP in just a second in terms of groundwater contamination. Has anyone considered that the voters have already approved siting a solar array at the at the transfer station in the grassy field where the sign is currently?
Put it there then. If that's what, I'm sorry, I'm gonna interject a little
Yeah.
here.
Sure, go ahead.
If that's where they've approved to put it, then put it over there, because that has the least effect on the public works transfer station operations.
Well, it
But
seems
if
to
you're gonna
me,
put it down in the lower yard where the dirty wood is, then we have some serious issues to discuss and overcome before we just start plopping them in.
so
Yeah.
I think we're in agreement, Dan, and that's exactly where I would suggest that we solve the problem, because if it were to be located there, it would be a little bit, it would still be accessible to the 3-phase power that exists down by the old roadbed where 135 used to become Berry Road. And it's already been approved by the voters. And, you know, I use that sentence, and it's somewhat accurate when I say that sentence, approved by the voters. You know, the reality of the select board is that we are the executive branch and our legislative branch are the voters. And when the voters told us their acceptance of installing a solar array at the transfer station. That's kind of like a direction from the voters that, yes, you should do that. Now, we have come up with some, a better deal than what we were, the 15% off that we were considering last year. And that better deal is not just a 15% off that will evaporate as soon as we receive next month's CMP bill, but it's a 15% off plus a locking in of the rate for the next 25 years for the town of Monmouth. And what that means is that we become immune from CMP's price hikes. So let's talk a little bit about the $3,500 maintenance agreement, because Chris, you
Before
brought
we
that
talk
one up.
about that, I think we need to clarify that the voters didn't approve. What they approved was entering into a lease agreement
With the sol-
with a
That's correct.
solar company. And then we would decide whether we decided to buy it at a certain point or not buy it.
Sure.
That-
Well, we
that's
can-
what, they didn't enter, the voters did not approve us spending money to build one and own one ourselves. What the
Yep.
voters approved was entering into a lease agreement with a solar company. So
You're absolutely
let's-
right. And I would continue that sentence, Chris, to say they approved us entering into a lease agreement with a company for solar panels located on town property at the transfer station in that grassy field. So if the solar panels are located in that position, and that's a workable thing, it seems to me like the voters have already approved it. And I think we've also had broad consensus. We didn't want to move forward with a lease agreement. I think we're all in agreement with that a lease agreement.
I don't know, that was never an option because we pitched those aside and,
Exactly.
we really only got one from Revision to lease with them, and then the other one was off-site, going into a co-op with Amoresco.
So you're right. So we set that aside and we found this deal, which is actually much more financially advantageous to the town. It would definitely and can definitely be located in the same place that the voters have approved, the same location. So if what I'm understanding the objection is when it comes to one of these 6 items that you have pointed out are concerns of yours, one of them is the location placement. And if what I'm understanding is that everyone is okay with locating the solar panels in the grassy field where the sign is, that will actually be a perfect space for a smaller version that the Amoresco has proposed, potentially even a little bit larger if we ask them to go a little bit larger to drop the per kilowatt price down for installation for the town. So are we in agreement? I mean, we're only talking about one of 6 items here. We're talking about the placement. Are we in agreement that that if the solar panels were located on the grassy area where the sign is, that this would be an acceptable location?
There, I couldn't find it anywhere. But that's a fine location as long as that the whole big thing I'd been saying all along is we needed to talk to Dan about this and figure out
Okay.
whether or not something is.
So Dan, would you be okay putting that right in the grassy field where the sign is?
It creates the least disturbance
Yes.
to existing and future activities.
Okay, but that's a yes.
It's a maybe. It's a maybe. What was that? No, this one is showing it only on there, but I mean, it's taking up so much space. I don't think it would all fit on the grassy spot. So it might have to be on both sides on the grassy spot, depending, but I'm not a solar engineer, so I'm not sure how much room we need for the capacity that's required.
Okay,
So
so,
I think that's the big thing.
so
So,
I'm trying to work with you folks here, to see if we can come up with a solution. If we can meet with the vendor who's made the proposal and point to the grassy field and say, would your system fit on that grassy field? What sort of modifications would we need to make? Would that be an acceptable solution to this? Or do you just want to say no?
Are we sure that whole grassy portion on the left side of the driveway going up is ground that we can put that on? There's nothing
Yeah.
buried under that. There's no landfill material under that.
exactly.
So
Yeah.
Doug knows the history of this. Doug, would you mind weighing in on that?
You a DEP engineer that knows where that was capped and how
No,
far
I-
back it goes?
I can't help,
Yeah,
You might know.
yeah.
Herb might know,
Can ask when he gets back from Florida.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I seem to recall a statement from Doug a couple of months ago that particular area was not filled in, that it was the area farther back in the property.
No,
So,
And I used to go there all the time when it was an open dump. I know exactly where the dump was, but I don't know how far out when they plowed it all around to level it out and fill it in. Where did they move it to? How much has been squished out to cap? You don't
Okay.
know. I'm sure they went in there and kind of mushed it all around and then capped it.
There's a
So,
pretty good chance I'm gonna see Herb tomorrow and I will have that conversation with him.
perfect. That's super helpful, Mark. And I imagine that if I am this contractor looking at signing an agreement with the town, that they may actually want to bore some samples to know for sure, because they would be they'd be breaking some serious statutes by
Yes,
installing something where it doesn't belong.
yes.
So I'm not suggesting that we would move forward without knowing for sure. But an informal conversation with Herb Whittier about where the cap begins on that parcel of land, I think would be helpful.
I will be passing through his little community tomorrow. I'm gonna stop there. If he's not on the golf course, I will have the conversation with him.
Awesome. Super.
I have a question is, can the array go on the capped land?
They generally are not allowed to install, I shouldn't say not allowed. They have to take additional provisions to make sure that they don't disturb the cap. So it becomes less economically feasible. There are additional provisions that would require more engineering and more site review, et cetera. So they don't really want to do that.
and in looking in this book, I don't see anything about decommissioning. So I think that's another topic of conversation. And Doug looked too while we were yammering away, and I can't see anything in there about decommissioning. So.
Okay, well, I'll tell
um,
you what, then maybe that is a question that we give to the town manager to ask of the vendor about the decommissioning plan.
And how much it would be, because I think, as we required Rick Dyer to have money escrowed to pay for decommissioning of that project on Ridge Road, obviously, if we wanted that from them, I would want that from us.
Well, my understanding was it wasn't our requirement. It was actually us piling on with DEP, because Maine DEP requires that of every solar installation that they oversee and permit. So DEP has these requirements that say that someone who is building a solar array has to have a plan for decommissioning. And that plan includes a bond, like an insurance policy, that sits in a bank somewhere that's
Yeah.
reviewed every 5 years for updated construction costs and expected disposal costs.
So I don't see that listed in here anywhere. So I think that has to be found out.
Okay, well, we can ask the town manager to investigate that.
When is it anticipated that the system would have to be decommissioned?
That would be when it's lost its economic life. So the panels.
How many years?
So that would be somewhere between 20 and 30 years from its commissioning.
And so the cost of decommissioning today is going to be far different from
Yes.
30 years from now.
Yeah.
And it assumes that there won't be any technical advancements during those 30 years.
So we would be locking in our electricity rates at the cost of electricity at the time it is commissioned. And the assumption would be that we're expecting rates to continue to increase as they have for the last 50 years. That electricity rates will continue to increase. The average over the last 50 years is about 3% per year. Although as we all know, the rate increase this year is like 40%. So there's a lot of variation in that, but it's a pretty safe bet that electricity rates will continue to increase. And when it comes back to the issue of decommissioning, DEP has a requirement for solar installations that say that decommissioning bonds should be reviewed by the bondholder. It's a requirement every 5 years. So if there have been substantial changes to the way that solar panels are decommissioned or construction costs in the decommissioning process, if those construction costs have changed, then the bond assumptions either would go up or would go down based on what it is every 5 years. So there is an internal mechanism for seeing that the town is not left with a problem at the end of life of this system. And so I've got no objection to asking the town manager to ask Ameresco what the decommissioning plan is for these two proposals they've got. I think that makes a whole lot of sense. You also mentioned the concern about the $3,500 maintenance plan.
I didn't say that. I didn't. I know
Okay.
it's a yearly maintenance plan. It has to be done because we're not going to ask Dan to go mow and trim and make sure everything works because he doesn't have enough time to do that. So I didn't
Well-
ask, that's not my problem. I'm not don't have a problem with that. My
Okay, so
problem
was there anyone else who had a problem with the $3,500 maintenance plan? Because that was something that you mentioned earlier.
I
But
don't
I
think
will
they
just
did.
take it off the list if everyone's is okay with that. Okay, hearing none, I will take it off the list. You mentioned the issue of timetable and the funding of the Inflation Reduction Act. And anytime that we operate in a environment where we don't have a whole lot of control other than the rules that we've been given, whether that's the electricity market or the paving market, like the cost of asphalt, love to pretend like we've got control over that, but we don't. We're a price taker in that. And so it is with this brand new law, the Inflation Reduction Act, which just took effect in January, which, by the way, is perfect that we now have a request for a very precise idea based on our request for proposal that Chris requested. She requested a price. Now we know what it costs. Now we can do a financial model that says, okay, this makes sense. Whether the federal law changes or doesn't, I don't know. You don't know. It seems to me like if we do delay, some other municipality will enjoy the subsidies that are written into the Inflation Reduction Act, and the town of Monmouth will continue to be a price taker when it comes to electricity prices. So, I mean, we can sit on our hands and then complain that nothing happens, or it seems like we're well positioned right now to take advantage of the law that has just been introduced and jump on it. If we don't jump on it, someone else will, and our taxpayers are going to continue to. Mark, if you're talking, Mark, you're on mute, bud.
Well, I think the biggest thing is what I feel my job is to ask these questions, and whether or not I agree with it doesn't matter. But my question is, people need to realize that it could go away if it's not completed at a certain time and the administration changes and it's unfunded or taken away, then we're on the hook for that extra $150,000 or whatever it ends up being, you know, 30%. So
It's-
if I don't ask that question, I feel like I'm not representing the people that voted for me to sit here and ask these questions. So
Sure.
I think we need to think about all those things.
I absolutely agree, and I appreciate the question, Chris. We certainly did not have a concern when we accepted the $150,000 subsidy for the culvert in North Monmouth. We certainly did not have a concern when we pressed forward with that project, even though we weren't sure that that subsidy was going to come through. So listen, tonight I'm not arguing because I like the project. I'm simply arguing because I think the project has enough merit to be worthy of being considered by the voters. And I think it's important for the voters to be able to weigh in on their decision. We all have our own personal opinions on whether this project is one that we would personally do. But in the end, this is a project that will pay for itself. It is which is very rare, by the way, that they don't often come along projects like this with a return on investment that is essentially thousands of percents, because there's no investment by the town up front, because we're simply redirecting resources away from our electric account toward our bank account, right? We're just using principal and interest, getting it paid with what we once paid for electricity. My point is, I hear these concerns. We should have answers for every one of these concerns. I haven't gotten all of them. There's one more about ground contamination. Chris, you said something about being concerned about ground contamination.
Well, I mean, I've just read enough different articles, pros and cons about what's there and what happens and where stuff goes and runoff, and knowing that we have Cobussy watershed.
Sure.
Right
So
there. So-
if Cobussy watershed is, if the Cobussy watershed district looks at this project and reviews this project, would that be acceptable to you?
Well,
Would that
I'm just trying
assuage
to
your
bring up-
concerns?
Well, I think that I'm just trying to bring up different things that have struck me that we need to ask all the questions. And, you know, I don't have a problem with putting this to the voters, but I think that we have to do our due diligence to try to come up with the answers before we just say, here it is, because as we know, the majority of the voters aren't going to have all this other information. And then there's also the question of wants and needs. What we want isn't always what we need. And yes, we need a road so that Beaver Brook doesn't wash away. So yes, we need a dam so that Dave can put his boat in and my house doesn't wash away. But there's difference between wants and needs. And yes, we need to have a dam and we need to have a culvert, but we don't need to have a solar array. I mean, yes, I get that power is expensive. I get a CMP bill too. But when it comes to how much money we want the town to be in debt for and how much money we want our taxpayers to pay us, that's our job.
Sure.
So,
Well, I think you and I share a concern about making sure that we have a reasonable amount of debt and that we have that we're not asking too much of property taxpayers in Monmouth. And that is actually the reasoning behind this particular project. I think it's important to use the same phrase, needs and wants. And I think the taxpayers are looking for us to do everything that we possibly can for the long-term financial interests of the town. Using a federal grant to offset some of the cost of this project, to make it super affordable and actually not even noticeable, because it won't drive an increase, right? I mean, if we did this project tomorrow, we turned it on tomorrow, there would actually be a slight decrease in the town's costs. The interest rates that Justin just quoted me are in the 4 to 5%. My initial model called for 6%. That just generally means that we will be paying slightly less than what we are currently paying CMP. So you and I are in agreement, at least in principle, maybe not in the way that the rubber hits the road, but in principle, what the taxpayers need and want both is a reasonable level of taxation. The outlay for the $130,000 outlay, forgive me, the $170,000 outlay for the culvert in North Monmouth, and what is likely to be a 6-figure outlay for the dam in Cocknowagon. Those are projects that just have costs. There's no revenue other than, you know, defending the property values of the people who own property in Cocknowagon. It is cash out of the pockets of taxpayers and into a contractor. The difference between those projects and this project is this one, actually, there's a cost substitution. We're trading financial costs for electricity costs. So we'll be paying a bill for 10 years. And after we're done paying off the principal and interest, then we will see actually a net benefit of $40,000 in current dollars, whatever that might be worth 10 years from now. The equivalent of $40,000 that would drop to the bottom line for taxpayers. Now, I don't know many investments in the financial world that have an infinite return on investment, but this is one of them, because it doesn't cost us anything up front other than to say, we're going to pay the bank instead of paying CMP.
And I get
That's
all
the-
that, but I think we
that's the
need to
basic
find
model.
out those questions, get answers to those questions before I can say I want to,
Okay.
you know, put this on here. I mean, because if we have to figure out if money needs to be bonded and escrowed to decommission it, I don't think that's in that number. So we need to know that number.
So let me make sure that I'm understanding what your ask is, because you threw a lot of objections out at the beginning, and some of them I think might have been answered during this conversation.
Well, no, we don't have the answers to it, and there's no answer to me just bringing up the fact that potentially the funding could go away. So that's just something that, you know, we need to be aware of, that we'd still be on the hook if potentially, you know, I'm being the devil's advocate here and saying, if that scenario happens, we need to know that we're going to owe that much more money if we don't get.
Oh, okay, all right. So Chris, let me go down the list of objections and just make sure that I am clear as to what is still on the list and what is not, because you'd mentioned $3,500 maintenance plan, but if that's built into the model and it gets paid for, we're good. You mentioned the decommissioning plan. We're going to ask the town manager to ask the vendor to more carefully describe exactly what they've got in mind for decommissioning. We all had this conversation about the location of it, and I think we've come to an agreement that the location that the voters approved last June is acceptable. May not be great. People might not be happy about it, but it's acceptable, and the voters told us to do it. You mentioned, and I don't know that there's an answer to this, but you mentioned that there might be the possibility that the Inflation Reduction Act would get reversed. You mentioned the possibility of groundwater contamination. But when we discussed that, you also said that if the Cobussy Watershed District was okay with this, then that would be an acceptable resolution. Like
That and having, you know, test bores done, if it passes, and, you know, there's always the chance that if they do test bores and find the app is way out there, so, you know.
Okay, yep, that's the last thing on my list is we don't want to disturb the cap. And
Yep.
so we're gonna start off by talking with Herb Whittier about where his recollection of the cap beginning is. And then, and if it's, if our understanding is reasonable, then I'm sure this vendor would continue on with that investigation and want to know scientifically by taking samples, core samples, to make sure that they haven't misunderstood anything. So
Kent, would you repeat your motion? Tell us if it,
sure, my motion would be to ask the town manager to draft a question that would appear on the warrant for June. Begin the drafting process for a question that would appear on the warrant for June to allow the voters to decide whether or not that this particular project is something they want to do.
I second the motion. Further discussion?
Would it be prudent to have some kind of a public hearing on this? To get information from both sides of the aisle?
Sure. Well, if it were to appear on a ballot in June, every warrant item, every warrant article is part of a public hearing. So we can absolutely have that conversation to make sure that we thoroughly understand all the objections and risks. I mean, nothing you do in life doesn't come along with some risks. So
The fact that the town manager drafts an article doesn't mean it's going to be on the article. Isn't that correct?
that's
We have
correct.
to
No,
approve it later.
we have to approve it to appear on the ballot.
Yeah, so I think we should approve the drafting of the article.
You ultimately control what goes on that warrant, and you will decide that at your first meeting in April.
That's right. So
Public hearing is
we
at your.
get a second bite at this apple.
Yes.
Okay, so you're set with this?
I'm good.
You Zoomers? So Ken has made a motion and Joe has seconded it to approve the drafting of an article by the town manager to appear on, for us to or to bring up at the public hearing on the warrant. Is this okay?
Can I amend that?
Yeah.
Kent is, and Joe, tell me if you still want to stay with me on a second. Kent has moved that we ask the town manager to draft proposed language for an article that would appear on the June warrant and for our consideration as a board prior to, what is it, April? What is it, Justin, that we need?
Real quick.
Yeah, prior to the deadline for it to appear on the warrant,
April 5th.
April 5.
Ideally, it would be available for your next meeting because that's when your public hearing is on the budget. So, actually on the warrant.
Can you do with that quickly?
I can get, yeah.
Yes.
I already, yeah, I'll second your motion as amended.
Yes, and I won't restate it, okay? Afraid you want to amend it again. All those in favor of the motion that Ken has made?
I vote yes.
I vote yes.
I vote yes.
I'm gonna vote yes to have the article drafted to begin the process.
I'll take that second bite, so yes.
Okay.
So everybody's in favor of this motion.
And as a a tangential point, if Justin could communicate with the vendor and ask for some more information on their demolition and decommissioning plans. That would be super helpful. And Mark's going to follow up with Herb Whittier, at least as the next step.
Correct.
Mark, you can caddy for him.
And Chris is going to see if the electrical engineers can give us some idea of kilowatt hours.
Yes.
Oh. Should there be something more formal involved in our, where the transfer station has been capped? I mean, should there be a map or something?
Or DEP knows where it is,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
I have never,
I think we have to file something when they did it, but I don't know. I've never seen it.
I've never seen any paperwork going through the office showing a good map.
Never seen it.
I will report back to Justin later in the week if I make that contact with him tomorrow.
Okay,
All right.
that's awesome.
Then on to a review of the fiscal year 24 budget.
So I gave you, there was an updated budget in the packet. The only change from what was in the packet that was distributed to you is the county budget was approved last Thursday, or was it this week? I don't know. It just got approved anyway. And it's up, it's a little higher than what is in there. It's up by about 13,000 plus over previous year.
Went up 5%, I think, didn't it?
5% overall, but the way that it affects the communities is not 5% for everybody.
Not uniform.
Right.
So it would include an additional cost of how much?
I think it's like 13, let me look real quick.
13
I think it's like 13,000 to more. It was 530 last year and it's 543 and change this year, next year.
So for the town of Monmouth, it's a $13,000 increase
Yes,
over 540,000. That's like 1%.
That's the cost of watershed.
yeah. I'm not sure, the capital sheet, those items that are on this sheet are included in the budget workbook. But what you will notice is the only things that are included in here, because you haven't made affirmative decisions one way or the other on any of these, on any of the requests. The only ones that I have included in the capital budget, that's in the budget total that you have in front of you, is our payment to Litchfield for the Woodbury Pond Dam. The Cocknowagon Dam repair estimate with the bonding and the Beaver Brook bridge replacement. So in the budget,
Justin, could you give us the figures for each of those three, please?
for the estimated debt payment for each one?
Yeah, so you're starting with the Litchfield Dam repair.
Yeah, our portion is $32,483.
Okay,
The Cocknowagon Dam, based on the estimates we have on a 5-year borrow to pay for that is $27,000 a year.
and we'd be
And-
borrowing how much to do that?
What, excuse me?
We'd be borrowing how much?
It's, I think it's I think we're at, let me do the math real quick, because I don't. Easier for me to do the math than to find it in my book. It's 5.
It's like 140-ish.
135,000.
Okay.
And then the Beaver Brook bridge replacement.
And then,
200. It's about, it's 200,000 total. I put that as an estimate. I put it over a 10-year bond, but that's up to you. So that'd be 23,000 a year.
so we'd be borrowing 200,000. Didn't we just say that it was 170 is the balance?
Yeah, it's not though. I did the math after you started talking. I was gonna correct it now. So it's 23,000 times 10. So our portion is 230.
230, okay.
It's because it goes beyond my spreadsheet years on the one I printed off, so there's more payments that aren't reflected here.
Okay, so, so currently in our capital budget that I don't know if we've officially approved, but these are definitely needs and not wants, right? For capital budget items. I'm showing that we would be taking on $365,000 of debt for the two projects that we would finance. And then we would just be paying off the first project, our portion of the Litchfield Dam. Does that sound about
That's
right?
correct. Litchfield didn't end up borrowing for that. They took it out of their fund balance, so it's already been paid. So there is no. Originally, they planned on having a debt schedule that we would share with them, but they paid it all at
Yeah.
once.
And we probably don't want to stiff the town of Litchfield, do we?
Probably not. Since we do have taxpayers on that body of water as well.
While we're talking about capital improvements, I really don't know how we're gonna get around the issue of the salt shed. I had a conversation with Dan before I left. And he pointed out some structures that I should look at. My initial thought of trying to build something that was less than $100,000 with the capability of adding onto it later on really isn't going to work, because what he's looking to have built is not a conventional building. It's more of a steel arch structure with a fabric top to it that is large enough to accommodate both salt and sand. It's a really sizable structure. We may be able to downsize it a little, but I don't see any way around getting it done all at once and it costing us, even his initial estimate of 400,000. We may be able to downsize the thing a little bit and get it down in the 300 range or something, but I don't see how we're going to get around. I don't see any way we can build this type of structure or what he was looking for less than $100,000.
And it's not possible to go with, I mean, I know we had talked about alternatives like structures with more, metal roofs and wooden walls that sit on top of, a concrete foundation that comes up so that the salt never touches the wood, for example, but that's not.
Well, for some reason, no other municipality seem to be doing anything like that.
Okay.
Everything new that's going up is similar, and he maybe can elaborate on that a little bit if he's still there. Everything is of this new design for sure.
Yeah, the design I'm looking at is overall what's been favored. There are some other variations. There's laminated arch buildings, and there are metal arch buildings with metal roofs. I haven't explored the specific cost of those types of buildings, but based on what I see in the economy, I can't imagine they're going to be any cheaper than what we're looking at. But that's just my humble opinion on that. I don't have any facts to back it up at the moment.
And
I think the nearest laminated arch is in Belgrade. They have a brand new one at their yard. You can see it from Route 8 and 11. It's a great big thing. It's green.
a monster.
Yeah.
And does anyone do like separate areas one for salt and one for sand that would allow us to compartmentalize and maybe just do sand this year? Anybody do like a two bin shed or a pair of sheds that are right next to one another?
Some do, based on what the layout of their property was when they built what they did. I think ideally, if we're gonna do it, we build one structure and just separate it in the middle with a shorter wall for sand on one side, salt on the other. But we can always, there's many options to discuss on that. It's just a matter of.
Yeah.
My personal opinion is that I think we set a number and then we build to the number. But if we're gonna build what we need, we are talking 300,000 and above. I don't see any way around it, no matter what type of building design we do.
Okay.
The estimate in last year's budget from the engineer that we typically use, Pine Tree Engineering, was a laminated arch, and it was about $450,000.
So the other interesting figure to understand is based on our past borrowing, how are we doing in terms of paying off principal? And if memory serves, maybe Justin, you could verify this for me, but I remember a figure in our capital line where we're paying down debt at about a clip of $500,000 a year. Does that make sense?
Well, we've been adding, we've added, if we take fiscal year 21, the town was making debt service payments of a total of 200,000, and going into this year, we're at 500,000. And based on just what I outlined, just what we currently have and those projects that I think everybody agrees is, we're at 640. And that doesn't, and we don't have any paving in here, just so everybody's aware, there's no paving in this budget right now. If we were to add that in, we'd be up close to 900. We would have gone from 200,000 to 900,000 in 4 or 5 years. So yes, we have low interest rates, but we've been adding a lot of debt service to the town budget over the past several years.
Okay. It would sure be helpful to have an accountant who's familiar with municipal financing to be able to give us an opinion on what other communities are doing and how does that square with other communities our size.
Generally, RKO does that sort of thing for us.
They'll do an assessment in the audit. I mean, for your purposes, it's not necessarily an academic exercise. It's a question of how high are you willing to have the mill rate climb? Just because financially speaking, the town has the capacity to borrow, and that it's not putting us in any, fiscal issue with us being able to borrow at good interest rates. That's all fine, but you have to weigh the other side as well, as how high are you willing to let the mill rate climb to pay for these things? So that's kind of the fundamental question. And that's for you folks to decide. That's the tough job.
Just because you can afford it doesn't always mean that you want that on your credit. You're looking at it in your day-to-day world,
Well, and do we have any indication as to when we could get a visit from our accountant or from the auditor to give us?
Oh, I could repeat the same thing I've repeated the last 3 meetings, that he's working on it and he's trying to get it done, but that's all I get. I ask him every Monday before this meeting and I get almost the same answer back. He's working on us on Saturdays at his home because he's busy. They're already engaged on their calendar year towns. What I mean by that is the towns that ended their fiscal year on December 31st, he's working on those now because it's the spring. So he's doing us on the weekends. But again, he said he was almost done. So I know I've been saying that, but I don't have any control over when he gets it back to us.
my accountant's telling me the same.
I think.
Do for our next meeting, like, for the public hearing, as far as the budget goes. We have a year.
So ideally, you'd want to have a good sense for what you're proposing to the voters at that meeting. Because it's the public hearing for them to voice either their opposition or support of the budget, which has been assembled. Certainly you could, I can add an agenda item before the public hearing where you would sort of finalize the budget that then you want the public to comment on. However, if you do that, then there won't be an opportunity for me to post this ahead of the meeting for people to be able to make judgments on. So that's kind of the issue. I tried to have the public hearing this year be before the meeting in which you sign the warrant. So in theory, you'd have the opportunity to take their comments and direct me to make changes before you approve the warrant. But if you want to do it, I know in the past you had kind of done that all in one meeting. You can do that if you want to, if you're not kind of prepared tonight to kind of finalize this. I can move the public hearing to be the same night that you sign the warrant. It just doesn't allow. You can certainly make changes that night. It's just hard to kind of do it on the fly, but we can do it. I'll make sure that Mark is here if you want to do that, so he can make changes in the spreadsheet and make sure the warrant articles are correct before you sign them. But we only have 2 meetings after. We only have 1 more meeting before you have to sign this on April 5th.
So what we have here,
Yes.
and there's 250,000 for paving.
No, it's actually, that would be fiscal year 25. So under the current year, there's 0 in there. 250 had been sort of the historical, that's the amount the town puts in every year. It's not in there right now because I haven't gotten any indication about whether you want to. Well, if you go down the column, are you looking at fiscal year 25 or?
Yeah, well, it's an old one, but you gave them, or you gave us. This is the latest. So it's got, and the 250 is gone. And then we have to add in the 2 dams.
The dam is included on this spreadsheet right now. The dam is, and the Beaver Brook bridge replacement and the Woodbury Pond Dam. Yes, that's already calculated in the total as it sits right now. And it's reflected on the front sheet of these legal pad. This is a summary of the budget with the estimated mill rate based on last year's total town value factored up 15%, which is what Dawn is going to recommend to you. Probably she's going to come to your April 22nd meeting.
Justin, the paving we were gonna do last year with the undesignated fund balance, am I correct in remembering it was around 400,000 we were gonna use out of that for paving?
600, I think, is the total. That includes the Compton Hall paving as well.
So if we use that funds and pave what we can pave, it's certainly going to improve everything around town as far as the roads go. We're just a little bit behind, not budgeting more funds for this particular calendar year. This summer, we're going to pave what should have been paved last year.
That's correct.
And
And the
another question for Dan, if we did appropriate, say $250,000 or $300,000 in capital improvements for a salt shed, and it turns out we get the thing engineered and get prices, and it turns out it's going to be $450,000 or $500,000. Is there anything that says we couldn't build a $90,000 building that we could store salt in? And then down the road, that building could be utilized for other purposes, storing equipment or whatever, when we got to a point where we could build what we want to build for a salt shed?
That's certainly an option, yes.
At
this point, any larger structure than what we have now is going to help us do our job better in the winter. It's just a matter of, from my viewpoint, it's a matter, do you want to spend a little and then still have to bite the big chunk of apple later, or do you do it the first time correctly.
Exactly. I hear what you're saying for sure.
Yeah, so.
And what we could do with that, Mark, to elaborate on that, is we could create a reserve fund for that purpose. So we would I'll use your number, the 250,000, we could put it into a, salt shed or public works building reserve fund, or just call it public works, whatever you want to do. And then it would be sitting there, and whatever we used out of it could be authorized by the select board, and the remainder would just sit there until a time in the future when you wanted to build something else. You wouldn't necessarily have to go back to the voters to use the remaining of that fund. That would be up to the select board to decide how to use that in the future.
We could throw another $50,000 or $75,000 a year into that fund until we got to a point where we were close to being able to build what we need.
That is correct.
Yeah, I don't see how we're gonna get through next winter. If we're gonna go salt priority, we are not gonna be able to do it unless we have some kind of a structure to store salt in, other than what we currently have.
Agreed.
So I guess it's just a matter of coming up with a number that we want to put in there. Is it 150,000? Is it 250,000? Or we need to come up with a number to start with.
So what do we want to do?
The agenda says we're supposed to review the draft. Have we done that?
Yeah.
Yes, you've done it in pieces. Now it's kind of all together, and you kind of have to just decide what you're comfortable with for what it's going to be for the taxpayers at this point.
So that at the
What's
next
in, what's
meeting
out. Yeah,
is a public hearing on that.
right.
So we need to, if we want to have a public hearing in 2 weeks, we need to plug a number in the
Correct.
salt and sand shed. So that there's a draft that we can have a public hearing on.
And after the public hearing, if you're uncomfortable with what's there, then you would make decisions about, do you want to cut things out? Do you want to add more things in? That would be your choice then before we sign the warrant on the 5th.
Mark, do you have a number you're comfortable with?
I would say if we went with the 250, which 200 or 250, which is what we should be putting into the paving budget. But we've got to give somewhere. So if we, ask for $250,000 to go towards a salt shed, stick with what we have left in the undesignated fund balance to do the paving this summer. And then we look for another $50,000 or $75,000 a year to put into that fund. And I don't know if we need to word that a particular way, but we're probably going to have to build something for a building before this coming winter. And it would be great if we could do that under that $100,000 threshold, because that would get the ball rolling a lot quicker with not having to do the engineering part of it. And we're going to run out of time really quick. Summer goes fast and everybody's busy, and it's going to be a struggle if we have to go through engineering to do something, which I know we're not going to be able to do in that $200,000 or $250,000 range anyway.
Right. So in that scenario, Mark, if we were to ask the voters for 250,000 and understand that we're probably only going to expend 90 or 100 of it, what would the balance would sit in an account somewhere?
That's what Justin was talking about. We would put that money into, an account that is designated for sand and salt shed. And it may take 4 or 5 years to get that built up to the point where we have the funding we need to build exactly what we need. Or what we want to do the job, because we know we need something, and we'll try to get it under that threshold.
Okay. And Justin, if that were built into our assumption, our budget, do you have a sense of what the mill rate would turn out to be?
No, I can't do that on the fly. I'd have to add it into my spreadsheet at the office. I could tell you next meeting, but I can't do it here.
Okay.
And I'm assuming we haven't heard anything back from the school.
No, I don't. No.
Okay.
I estimated 5% in the budget that's before you because I believe that's what the contract called for in their bargaining agreement. And I know the schools, the labor is what drives most of their budget. So I put 5% as a holding place. It may be more, I don't know.
And the county is up 2%-ish, 1 or 2%.
Yeah, for us, something like that. Yeah, 14,000.
Okay. So even if we're above inflation this year for our budget-wide increases, that's only actually, 37% of the total. If the school and the county beat inflation on 2/3 of the total, and we're slightly above, the total for your typical taxpayer would be an inflationary increase.
Sounds like it to me.
Yeah.
Would average out to 6 or 7%.
Well,
8%.
let's see what the mathematician tells us once he punches it all into his spreadsheet.
So do we need
Okay.
a motion on that?
No, it's fine, just as long as I know that's, so the 250,
Yep, I think that's a
and
good,
we'll create a reserve account, so when I
Yeah.
draft it, it'll be written up that way.
yep,
Okay.
Okay, that's okay.
yep. Okay,
We're all set? Well,
Yes.
with all this, with the review. Then on to the warrant, number 18.
Gary Talbot Royer, Business Services, $7,430. Blue Rock Earthworks, Transfer Station Transport, $2,564. Business Management Systems, this is the CEO software, $1,989. Calderwood Engineering, $1,206. This is for the designs for the Cocknoagan Dam. Dennis K. Burke, fuel, $10,067. Dyer electrical work at Thompson Hall, $2,850. Main Technology Group, our IT support and some project work, $2,795. Main Waste to Energy, $3,506. Mission Square Retirement, 57B plans, $3,089. New England Salt Company, $5,682. And State of Maine, IF&W, $3,143, and WB Mason, various office supply, $1,252, for a total of $69,422.
I make a motion, we approve warrant number 18 for fiscal year 22-23.
Second,
The motion by Chris, second by Ken, to approve warrant number 18 for fiscal year 2022-23. All those in favor?
Kent votes yes.
Mark votes yes.
Thank you.
Are you tabling the next?
Yes, Kent has requested or asked if we could table the executive session until the next meeting. Right,
That would be my hope. Mark, will you be back in town then too?
I will not. I will come in like this. Executive session, I'm assuming I'm not going to be able to do it through the Zoom. But the only concern I had, I voiced to you, and I'm good with everything else. So I will review my emails, and if there's anything
Yeah, I
else.
thought he could, so it's not recorded. You can do executive session over Zoom, we just don't record it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be here in 2 weeks. I'll still be
Okay.
here, but I'll zoom in.
But you'll Zoom and
Good for you, I'm jealous.
Yeah, exactly. Don't rub it in. All right,
okay. So,
oh,
sure.
but I just want to mention. Look at your email from Mark Roy and sign your DocuSign Okay.
Well, I saw that, but they wanted me to sign, but I didn't know what I was signing.
You're signing the warrant and you're signing the
Warrant that we
payroll.
already approved.
We approve it, but we have to sign it. They have to have our signatures on it. Before we had the accountant doing the books for us, there was a piece of paper we all signed. But once the accountant started doing the books, we have to do the DocuSign and approve the warrant so that they can send checks to the people we owe money to and so that they can pay the employees.
Okay, well, I think I can find that now. So- And there's three of them.
Yeah.
I signed one about 3 days ago that I saw a note, we needed one more signature, and I
Yes.
usually go on after the meeting and do my other one.
Yeah, so just keep an
Just
eye
need
out.
three of you and me, and then the checks go, but if I only got two, the checks hit. He can't send them out,
And,
so.
and we don't want, a revolt for the staff not getting their checks, so just a FYI.
But there's three things to sign, one for the
Yes.
fire department, one for employees,
Yeah,
and one for
Bills.
the bills.
bills, yeah.
Seems like I've only been seeing two. I've been seeing the payroll
Normal-
warrant and then the regular
Yeah,
warrant.
there's an extra one this
Okay.
time because the fire department's paying
Quarter.
the quarterly
Okay,
payroll.
Yeah.
So that's why there's an extra one.
Yep.
So that's my 2 cents. I just want to keep the town and, looking good, paying our bills. So, so I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second,
All those in favor?
Mark votes yes.
night.
Good night.
Bye, thank you.